All right.
Live?
Cheers.
All right, cheers.
Look forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome everybody in internet land. Here with Tim Marks is here with me, Reef Builders, Ecotech Marine, for our first Google Hangout, live Google Hangout, to tell the world about this new product, this new device that you've designed and put together. And yeah, this is our first Google Hangout, so bear with us as we, feel us up, but we're just going to try to walk through this new device and tell you all about it.
Yeah, look forward to it.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
Excited.
We've been working up to this all day. So about 2 weeks ago, we started hearing news about a new product coming out of Ecotech Marine, the Vectra pump, Vectra M1 and L1. And this is the first completely new product category from you guys, probably since the Radeon, right?
Yeah, I would say so, since the Radeon.
All right. So
we've actually been working on it since longer than the Radeon, though, ironically.
So tell me a little bit about the Vectra M1 and L1 pumps. This is the L1, the larger version. This is the box for the smaller pump.
Yeah, exactly. Well, basically, the Vectra pump is one of the smartest, if not the smartest, DC pump on the market. What we've done is we've taken the typical things that you would find in a DC pump, and we've expanded on them tremendously, so to the point that it's barely comparable to anything else that really exists.
As a longtime Ecotech and Vortech fan, for some reason, for a long time, I really expected you guys to make a Vortech return pump.
Yeah.
With the motor on the outside of the sump.
Yep.
And then like a centrifugal assembly on the inside of the sump.
Sure.
10 years ago, 8 years ago, this was my hoop dream that one day Ecotech Marine will come out with a smart return pump. But man, it really took a long time to bring something like this to market. Can you talk about? You mentioned that this has been under development in some way or another since before the Radeon. Why is now the right time to release a controllable DC return pump?
Yeah, I think the important thing to realize when we're talking about return pumps in general is that they are the heart of your aquarium. They are pumping blood into the main tank. And if they fail, if they stop beating, you're not going to have any oxygen. Your aquarium's going to die. So the topic of a return pump should not be taken lightly. And that's how we treated the project for the last 6 years or something. We wanted to make sure that what we did was effective and innovative at the same time, and we took our time.
So the one thing to note is people who are really into kind of high-tech gear, when a new company comes out with a new device, emotionally we want it to look really different, right? We want it to look fundamentally different. And your pump body doesn't look that different. This is, after all, just a centrifugal pump. Can you just talk about the shape of the body and why it kind of resembles other pumps on the market?
Well, I think you nailed it. After all, this is a centrifugal pump. And when it comes to the centrifugal pumps that I put in my aquariums, I'm not so concerned about what it looks like on the outside as much as what's on the inside. And that's where this product is not like anything else on the market, is what we actually put inside of it, both inside of the actual pump body itself, as well as in our driver and in the control interface.
Right. I mean, as far as any really, power head on the market, centrifugal pump on the market, they all have a general similar form factor. So it's strange, it's just feeling it, the molding on this is really nice, heavy duty, it doesn't feel flimsy at all, it feels weighty.
No, it's heavy. Yeah, the L1 weighs a good 6 or 7 pounds, actually.
Yeah, I mean, if there's bodies like this available in the market, there's no sense in spending money on the tooling when you can kind of invest on what's inside.
Well, that's a great way to put it. I mean, basically, yes, I could completely reshape this and make it look entirely different.
You could make it elliptical.
Yeah, exactly.
Make it look like an egg.
Yeah, make it look like nothing you've ever seen before. But at the end of the day, all I'm going to be doing is passing costs along to the consumer, and that's not what we're going for here. What we're going for is a innovative product. Not necessarily a product that's just expensive for the sake of being expensive, and that's how we came up with our price point.
So the generic shape of the body is basically a streamlining of the components that are inside, right?
That's exactly right.
All right, so
it's function over form.
Absolutely, I see. So you mentioned that it's different inside. Tell me a little bit about the motor block inside. How is that different?
Okay, well, the entire pump is different.
What is typically found in a pump? Motor block, and then how is yours different?
I would say that the common pumps currently are all 24 volts for one thing, and basically have a driver that allows you to select between 6 different speeds.
Okay.
That's where the similarities, they don't even start. First off, this is not a 24-volt winding, it's a 36-volt winding.
What do you get from having 50% more volts?
You get lower current draw and lower heat losses in the coil as a result.
So does it make it more efficient,
yes,
more powerful?
It makes it more efficient.
Is it also more powerful?
Well, as a result of higher efficiency, at the same wattage, we provide more flow.
Okay. All right. So you have more windings in there. What else do you have going on?
We have a thermal sensor inside of the motor, which is a significant improvement over what else is out there. So the cable's down here, and one thing you'll immediately notice is that there are 5 conductors on the cable, and it's a heavy-duty waterproof connector that's molded over. It's not just soldered or crimped on. And the benefit of that is that in our driver, we can actually measure the temperature of the motor, and we can either let you know that everything is going well, we can give you a warning if maybe something is going astray, or we can completely shut down the situation if something is really wrong.
So of these connectors right here, you got 5 of them. One of them's the ground, right?
2 of them are for the thermistor within the motor, the temperature sensor, and then 3 of them are for the various phases of the motor.
Okay. So yeah, this definitely looks a lot more like the connector I'd find on a Radeon LED light.
It's actually more or less the same.
Yeah, it definitely supports the possibility. I mean, I know it's there that this pump is smart and has a lot more going on. So another thing that I think might be a holdout from my days of being a aquarist when I was younger is I remember some of the higher end pumps were able to pick between you could change out the impeller, so you could have a closed impeller that was really optimized for pressure, or you could have a different impeller that was really open with more blades for water flow.
Yeah.
So I was hoping that when you release a pump, maybe you would have that option, but that's not the case. So tell me about your impeller and why you chose to go with that one.
Yeah, at this point, the technology has evolved to a position where there's no reason to choose between flow or pressure except on fringe cases. And the impeller in the Vectra pump is optimized essentially for both.
Right.
And that's why
we only can control the RPMs?
Yeah, we can control the RPM. So basically, with a normal fixed speed pump, you only have so much pressure max that you do, and at any given head pressure, your flow drops accordingly. With the Vectra pump, what we can do is, in the event that we're up against more pressure, and therefore the flow would normally drop on a fixed speed pump, we actually increase the RPMs and increase the flow as a result. So our pressure versus flow curve is a good bit fatter than it would be if it was a fixed speed pump.
And then earlier we discussed a little bit about the use of iron ferrite magnet versus a neodymium magnet. Without getting too technical, can you touch upon the pros and cons of each material?
Yeah, when it comes to these kinds of motors, there's 2 basic technologies for the rotor design. And
that's the spinny part inside.
That's right. It's what's behind the impeller inside the body of the pump. And what we decided to do is go for the less maintenance intensive option, the simpler one, the one that is more reliable long term, and that's a ceramic ferrite magnet. The competing option would be neodymium. Neodymium is extremely good. I mean, on paper, it looks wonderful, but in practice, it doesn't give you a whole lot of benefits for the added cost.
Right.
And what we didn't want was an excessively expensive return pump, because in this industry, I think at this point, we just don't need any more of those devices.
So before we move on to the other hardware, we wanted to, this is really going to be a Q&A session. Right now, we're just kind of discussing the pump and just sharing with you live the features of the Ecotech Marine Vectra M1 and L1 pumps. If you have any questions, please post them to the Ecotech Marine Facebook page, and someone is actually assisting us in looking at those questions so we can answer them live with you as we get to some of those points. So we're going to cover a lot of different aspects of this pumps, so just stay with us. We're going to cover a lot, but if there's anything left over, feel free to ask questions about the device.
Start asking questions now.
Yeah, as we get your questions in. Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, the one thing that is visually different about your pump is these unions that you have built in. Tell me a little bit about these.
These are quick couplers. The advantage of the quick coupler is that on the outside threading of this pump is a male pipe thread. So this will work with PVC plumbing that you can pick up at any store.
The standard from when you get at Lowe's or Home Depot.
Yes, exactly. I would use Teflon tape to ensure an adequate seal. But what you'll see is that there's O-rings on the face, front here and top here. So what we've done is we've created a union that will actually screw right onto that. And the advantage to that is basically just that it's a lower profile and easier to use. And
yeah, regular union fitting is going to cost you, I don't know, 12 or 15 bucks.
At these sizes, it can be really big.
But a standard PVC coupling is going to be about this large, so be like 10 or 15 bucks depending on the model.
Yeah.
And then for a true unit ball valve, bigger.
Yeah. Now, and if you're running this externally, you may very well find the need to do that. It's your decision. But for many people who are running it internally or just externally, but very simply with flexible tubing attached to the input and output, this is a great solution.
Speaking of flexible tubing, I would have loved to see a barb fitting go into here.
Sure.
Two things that people are really going to want for internal operations is kind of like a thoughtful pre-filter. A lot of pumps really need that. In aquarium, sometimes we just kind of omit it and just hope that nothing gets in the sump and then the barb on top. Do you have any features like that in the pipeline or soon or just? So
the advantage to the quick coupler, the premise of the quick coupler is that you have these inserts. So in this case, this insert is for slip fittings.
Right.
So you would just glue a PVC pipe into that. And ultimately what you are very likely to see would be alternative slip fittings, or I'm sorry, alternative quick coupler fittings. So instead of a slip fitting to fit inside of here, it would be a barb fitting that you would then screw and tighten down on the top of the pump. And same for the intake strainer.
Very, very cool. So that kind of covers the hardware side of the pump itself. You forgot the slip fitting. There we go. Can you tell me a little bit more about the driver? Because the driver box looks very similar to what we've seen before, but it also looks a little bit different.
Yeah, it's not even the same driver. It is in the same box top. On the back, we've got a die-cast aluminum heat sink, but this is a completely specialized driver for the Vectra pump and features a tremendous amount of unique aspects to it.
Does this driver fit your new holders for the quiet drive drivers?
We have separate holders specifically for Vectra pumps that are supplied with the pump itself.
Yeah, because this looks a little bit thicker, and when you set it in that driver, it looks like it'll still be able to breathe, just because you're passing so much more power through it.
Well, that's it. I mean, this is the L one is approximately 130 watts plus, and that's a lot more than even an MP60, which runs at about 60 watts max.
So when people look at their driver, they're going to see a lot of familiar things, right? They're going to have kind of like this heavy-duty connector.
Yep, which plugs into the other end of the pump.
Right here, and then we have the power supply.
Exactly.
And then finally, we have the battery backup.
Of course, necessary for a return pump.
So this is going to be compatible with the battery backup accessory that you have?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I see a fourth thing here. What is this little switch here?
Let's show everyone else. There is a additional port. The purpose of this port is smart switches. We can do optical switches, we can do liquid level switches, we can do multiple liquid level switches all on the same Vectra. And in addition to that, by using ESL, you actually have the
EcoSmart Live.
Yep, EcoSmart Live. You have the capability of creating unique if-then statements to program what your Vectra pump or any other product in the EcoSmart family will do when those switches are triggered.
So the most obvious use case scenario would be a low-level sensor for your sump.
Or a high-level sensor to shut down your pump in the event that your aquarium's overflowing.
Right. Will it be possible to do both?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so as far as that accessory right now, how is that implemented? Is somebody going to have to kind of DIY that or need switches on the market?
No, we'll be selling switches that come with the harness, and you'll buy the switch, whether it's a optical switch or a regular reed-style liquid level switch. Multiple switches, and you purchase them and then you plug them into the switch port.
So people can get these from other companies, but you're going to offer one in the future?
No, they actually, ours are intelligent. So our driver knows which switch is plugged into it and then gives EcoSmart Live the appropriate option menu for each switch. So they'll be specialized to our product line, but they're not going to be particularly expensive. We're keeping it very simple and straightforward and making it useful.
Right. So one thing that I've always loved about the Vortec pumps is this RGB multicolor indicator right here, and the pulsing line right here.
Yep.
Is this pump gonna be pretty smart out of the box without getting on EcoSmart Live? Will you be able to hit some features right here?
Yeah, probably 90% of the features that exist for this pump are available right out of the box. The difference is just that you'll have to read the manual and enter in some button presses. Keep an eye on the indicator lights to know what you're doing in order to do all the features.
Right. Just so it doesn't go without saying, this is going to be compatible with EcoSmart Live.
Absolutely.
So it'll communicate with the Reef Link
Yep.
to get on that network.
And with our entire family of products, the
Right.
Radion and the Vortex.
And they'll work together.
Yeah.
Man, I had one more thing. I can't remember what it was just now.
Well, we can talk about ESL. I think that you know, one of the huge aspects of this product in general is the fact that it can work with ESL, and as a result, there's a variety of different features.
Oh, right. I know what I wanted to say. For the most part, people are using these DC pumps for returns, but there's also a closed loop setting, right,
Yep.
or option. So
Yep.
the pump knows that it's not returning water. It knows that it's pumping water in a closed loop mode.
Yep.
So using ESL, what are some of the different things people will experience when they're using it as a return pump mode or in closed loop mode?
So when you're using a pump in return pump mode, the pump itself needs to be very aware of the various head pressures and current draw and flow that it's outputting in order to make sure that it's running in a healthy fashion. And versus when you're running in a closed loop mode, it's a zero head situation. We're able to just change speeds and go with the flow. So in closed loop mode, we give you the ability to do constant speed, reef press random, lagoon random, and gyro mode at this time.
You know, the thing is, like, it seems like there's not that many use cases for making this pump really smart. Yeah, I want to know what it's running. I want to know that it goes faster or slower. But what are some, some convincing methods whereby EcoSmart Live kind of takes advantage of the smart features of this pump?
Well, I'll give you one good example. It's calibration. This pump is the only pump in the world that can actually be calibrated for your given system's head pressure. And that
what do you mean by
sides.
calibration? Like you have a jug at the end and you measure the flow of water,
Nope.
or what?
You don't even have to do that. The process is simpler. But without getting into the process, the benefits of it, which is what really matters, is I'll give you a good example. You know, with a speed controllable pump, especially one as powerful as this, you do have the potential to overwhelm the return plumbing of your overflow into your sump. And so you can set a maximum speed for the pump so that you don't overwhelm the overflow. And then when you are varying, say you want to vary speeds, or there's other purposes where you might want to vary speeds specifically, we can make sure that you never accidentally go to too high a speed. And likewise, the same thing is true on the low end. With a speed controllable pump, you actually have the capability of doing a huge amount of damage to your aquarium if you turn the speed of the pump so low that the pump can't provide enough pressure to get water into your main display. So what we do through calibration is we actually record and document where the point is of flow just trickling out into your aquarium, and then we program that as your minimum setting.
Right, so it's not like a feed mode where a pump just turns off and it back siphons, drains some of your tanks, stirs up the detritus in your sump, but it just
and then it pumps all the detritus back into your aquarium.
Right, so it just stays at a nominal level.
You got it.
Trickling. So
our feed mode,
no siphon, and it's not really pushing water through and sending the food down the overflow box.
Yeah, our feed mode is very unique, and it's exactly that. When you hit feed mode, we stop the water flow. We don't allow the water to back flush through your system. We literally just hold it in your plumbing. That way, when we start the water flow again after feed mode, there's no air bubbles coming back in your aquarium.
I mean, that's really cool. On paper, it's definitely an intelligent feed mode. And if you're just, look at it on paper and comparing feed modes from pump to pump, that might seem not like a really convincing feature. But in practice, this is one of those things that, an everyday aquarist as they're feeding their tank, you want to concentrate the food in your tank. You don't necessarily want the pump to totally go off. And you don't want to disturb the detritus in your sump. So yeah, I mean, that's really, really cool. But give me something else. Give me something else. What are some of the ways that this pump can really do something that we haven't experienced before?
All right, absolutely. Let's talk storms. Storms are a really popular thing in the hobby, and up until now, storms have pretty much been an aesthetic exercise.
Right. I mean,
limited
storm mode, you're just adding a little lightning, spooking your fish, and saying, hey, this is cool to your people. And then that was a little bit better, when the Vortex started doing the storm mode and started acting up. And so.
Well, until now, right?
Yeah.
And what the Vectra represents is what really matters in a storm mode. Your lights go dim, that's for your visual pleasure. When the Vortex start acting up, what they're doing is kicking up detritus. With a fixed speed pump, you're not getting any more of that detritus into your overflow and down in your protein skimmer than you ever were before. But with integrated storm mode using the Vectra pump, ESL, and the Ecotech Marine family of products, you can increase the speed of the return pump during a storm so that the detritus kicked up in the aquarium goes down into your overflow and into your skimmer where it belongs.
So for that, would you want to, in your calibration, have like an audible maximum and then like a physical maximum? And so your tank would run at the audible maximum to the point where it's not gurgling.
Yep.
And then, in store mode, it kind of ramps up to that physical level.
Yeah, where the max that your plumbing can actually handle.
See, for me, that is one of those features that would make me want to buy this pump alone. When I started up in the hobby, I remember reading an article by Julian Sprung, we're using their power heads to blow the detritus off our
exactly.
tanks.
Turkey beasters,
but my Mag Drive 5 just kind of had the fixed speed, and I still do the store mode manually. Once a week at best. Every couple of weeks, once a month. But
nowadays you automate it, or you do it with the push of a button.
We'll say if you were able to do this though, like every day, you really could just flush out so much more detritus from your entire system.
Oh, I think so.
And just get it to the filter where it matters, well before it builds up in your tank, so you don't have to manually do it. That's an action where either you push it on your phone or the driver, or have it programmed to happen once a day.
I can think of another good example of something that we can do. Pump self-cleaning mode. Okay, so what we're capable of doing is ramping the speed of the pump reasonably quickly. And what we could do is we could potentially ramp the speed of the pump up so that we push water up the pipe, but not necessarily right out of it. Allow the water to fall back through the pump, and then repeat the process 3 or 4 times to create, get the detritus out of the plumbing, and then allow it to backflush into your sump.
So you say we could. It doesn't sound like you have these available yet.
Most of the features are going to be available at launch, at least most of the features that we've talked about now. But one of the beauties of the Vectra pump is that it doesn't rely on hardware to do what it really is capable of doing.
It relies on the specific hardware.
It relies on the hardware built into the driver and the pump itself, but then the feature set is created digitally through ESL.
So what about communicating with other devices and other controllers? Can you tell me a little about what you have in store for that?
Absolutely. We're already talking with third-party controller companies. I mean, that's a big thing. But initially, we are focusing on the core feature set and the functionality of the product out of the box.
Yeah, no, it sounds like the integrated store mode and the calibration are things that are don't really need to happen outside the EcoSmart Live environment. But I know that was kind of a big question we've gotten quite a bit, so it's really important to address that. Tell me more about notifications, because this is a smart pump, so it kind of knows what's happening to itself.
Yeah, it does.
So what can this do, and alert people to what's happening to it?
All right, so notifications these days, when we have smart products, we want to make sure that we actually get smart value, smart features.
It's more critical than ever with the heart.
It is the heart of the aquarium. More than a single light or a single vortex. I mean, this is providing all the flow through your sump. One device. It matters whether it's running, whether it's on, whether it's off, and whether it's running optimally. And so what we've done is we've created the ability to send you in-app notifications, an email to let you know if something's wrong. We've got statuses of just everything is good. We've got statuses of the power supply is dying. My power supply is failing. Something is wrong.
But some power supplies don't always fail, right? A lot of times it just
the voltage starts dropping.
Right.
Yeah.
So
brownouts too. If a brownout occurs, that can either do damage to your power. That can do damage to your power supply. But more importantly, you might just want to know and go check your system in general, and we can let you know that happened.
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting is we've had controllable DC pumps on the market in some way, shape, or form for some time now, right? And they've only had 6 speeds, and it's kind of like a breath of fresh air to finally have a smart pump that does smart things. It feels like there's been a good engine in a lot of other devices, but they haven't. Like it seems like a pump like this would know if there's a little bit of blockage on the intake. It seems like a pump like this would know or somehow report back when there's something stuck in its impeller and it's not
physically
quite right.
It's capable of knowing. It's just a matter of whether people put the time and R&D into exploiting those features, and that's entirely what we've done with the Quiet Drive driver.
Very, very cool. So what models do we have? Let's go over a few specs, prices, metrics. Tell me. Let's start with the L1. This is the big one for now, right?
Yeah. This is the large one.
Okay.
The L1 puts out about 3,000 gallons per hour and runs $449. It can provide about 21 feet of head pressure. And
what's the power draw?
It's about 130 watts.
130 watts. So
yep.
Very, very nice. And when is this pump shipping?
This pump will ship mid-August. It's just a little bit behind the M1.
Okay. This is the box for the M1. How much smaller is the M1 than the L1?
Physically, the M1 is probably about 1/2 the size. Yeah, it's a good bit smaller.
It's about 1 inch shorter in each dimension, right?
I would say so. Yeah.
It's easy put. So what are the metrics on the M1?
So the M1 is about 2,000 gallons per hour. It provides also about 20 feet of head. and it consumes 80 watts at maximum.
And how much is that one?
349.
And so once upon a time, you actually released Vortec products, Vortec pumps with and without the wireless feature. It sounds like that's a thing of the past. These are all going to be wireless from now on.
The value in these products is in the ability to communicate wirelessly.
Okay. And it kind of seems obvious. You have the M1, you have the L1. You definitely left yourself some space for an S1 for small.
Yes.
And an XL for large.
Sure.
Do you have any time frame of development on some of these devices?
I can't really comment as far as the time frame, but I can tell you that certainly devices such as that are something that we are paying attention to.
Right. Paying attention to. That's some corporate speak right there. Now, for me, one of the most exciting possibilities with this Vectra pump is having a smart protein skimmer pump. If I could have, radions on my tank, Vortex providing the flow, Vectra pump, being the heart of the system, and then some form of Vectra needle wheel running my protein skimmer. I mean, that would just send the reef aquarium community in a tizzy if you develop
switches.
A protein skimmer. Yeah.
The backbone is there.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, that's something that would be really, really exciting to see, a needle wheel version of this pump. So is there anything else you want to say about this device before we start taking some questions?
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing some questions.
All right, what kind of questions do we have?
You've answered them all.
We've answered all the questions.
We've answered everyone's question. Someone's got to come up with a new question.
How long have you been testing this particular model, this particular pump?
Years.
For years?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what we didn't talk about? We didn't talk about quiet drive.
No, we didn't talk about quiet drive at all, actually.
That is the whole reason for this pump's existence.
And it is a really big difference between the Vectra pump and anything else in the world.
God, I can't believe we just totally glazed over the main feature of this pump.
Yeah.
Okay, the real reason you came up with this pump was because of the developments and the progress with quiet drive and the driving technology that makes the Vortex silent.
We do not just want to come out with another product on the market. It needs to be special.
Right.
The quiet drive provides exactly that. So I mean, a good example of a quiet pump on the market is somewhere around 20 decibel rise over ambient, and 20 decibel.
What is that equivalent to?
A low whisper vroom type of noise.
Right.
Nothing that's particularly offensive, but something that you definitely hear.
Absolutely.
1/2 decibel over ambient. This product is utterly silent.
And I can back that up. I've seen this pump actually in action, and you have to, the noise of the water rushing through it and the water coming out of it more than drowns out the operation of the pump. You have to touch the pump on to see if it's on.
Yeah, you don't know if it's running if it weren't for the.
I can't believe I forgot to put it down on the notes, the whole quiet drive part. This is, the smart is really, really great, but the silent, right? You want to talk about silent versus quiet?
Well, there's a difference to say it right there. I mean, quiet is something, again, that you hear constantly, but you don't notice it until it's gone.
Right.
And that's the difference. Silence is golden. And with this product, it is utterly silent.
Right.
There is no noise.
As the male-dominated reef aquarium hobby would say, this is kind of the device that will get the kitchen pass for purchase, because it's just going to make the tank fundamentally quieter. Yeah,
if the wife is sensitive to noise, this is a product that you're going to pursue.
That's why I really like the calibration with the two different maximums. So you have your physical maximums, what your system can handle, and the audible maximum. That for me, that's just the greatest, because in addition to having feed mode, I'm just as likely to come in there and be like, all right, let me get flush mode. I want to ramp up from audible to physical maximum and get the pump to really, really throttle up.
Yep, absolutely. I think we had a question, Pat.
Yeah, so Art C asks, what size are the fittings on the L1?
Okay, great question. So the threaded fittings on the L1 are 2-inch male.
Intake?
Yep, intake, and 1.5-inch male on the output. Okay, so that would be if you're going to plumb PVC directly to the threaded fittings. If you're going to use the quick couple, then we reduce the input to 1.5-inch, and the output is reduced to 1-inch on the L1.
Let me ask you, what are the, we talked about pressure versus flow overall, but so with this quick coupler, what is the trade-off between going from 1.5 inch PVC return versus having that reduced straight to 1 inch?
On the output, less of an issue. Output impacts the overall efficiency of the product much less than the input would. So on the output side, it's really not quite that big of a difference. On the input side, just a little bit. And if flow is critical, if your system is sensitive to flow and you're really maxing out the potential flow of the product, then you probably will want to consider to do the hard plumbing versus using the quick couplers. The quick couplers are an excellent solution to someone that might be using this product in sump or with just flexible lines.
Right. It also seems like if you wanted to bias towards the flow, you would use PVC and go over the tube to increase the flow rate. But if you wanted a lot more pressure, that's when you would reduce it down to.
Pressure is actually the same one way or the other.
You think so?
Yeah, more or less.
What else I got?
Okay. Art C also asks the question,
Hey, Artsy.
how long will the L1 work on battery backup?
Okay, that's a really good question. And the answer to that question is it depends on the head pressure of your system. Okay, so if your system is only providing about 4 feet of head pressure, then the total amount of energy to get water from your sump into your aquarium is much less than if you have an L1 in a basement up against 15 feet of head pressure.
So that's another calibration you can do, right?
In the sense of battery backup speed.
Yeah, you
yes.
could have it, a certain speed that's specifically for flow rate, because you could have, depending on your stocking level, you might want it to run really low, you might want it to run really high.
Yep.
So there might be another calibration for battery backup mode.
Yeah, well, battery backup mode, you can actually program the speed that you want it to run at.
Okay.
Yep. Pat?
Okay. Mark Van Hook asks, what kind of heat transfer to the tank is there from this style of return pump?
I'd like to answer that question.
That sounds like a great one for you to answer.
It's kind of interesting and funny when people say this or that pump transfers this or that much heat to the pump, but all of that energy breaks down into heat. So if you have a 50-watt pump, it will add 50 watts of heat. If you have an 80-watt pump, it's going to add 80 watts of heat. That's run internally. So if it's run externally, you're going to have a little bit less heat transfer to the system, but it's going to be nominal.
No, that's exactly correct. When we say that this pump consumes approximately 80 watts, what we're actually talking about is the amount of power going into the pump. Power supplies and drivers have a little bit of inefficiency associated with them as well. So at the wall, you may actually have somewhere closer to 90 watts. That 10 watts is being dissipated in the driver and in the power supply outside of the aquarium. But the remaining 80 watts we are putting into the pump, and that heat is going into your water one way or the other.
I've just always struggled when people say this or that power head is it runs cooler or runs warmer. If you want to look at if you're curious about how hot the pump is going to get, you really just need to look at the gallons per watt. That's your real efficiency. That's what's going to tell you if this thing adds more or less heat to the aquarium relative to its flow rate. But otherwise, the complete power draw of the pump is going to be how much heat goes into your aquarium as if it were a heater.
Well, and especially if you're running it internally, absolutely so. If you're running it externally, it's variable. Some heat will be dissipated around the pump out to the air, but the water is, of course, coming inside the pump and cooling the pump. And so some heat is.
No, I've actually done experiments before, and so I think an 80-watt pump would add probably 75 watts of heat to your system. So just look at the overall gallons per hour
per watt.
Yeah, that's going to be your real metric. If a pump runs cooler or warmer.
If heat is a real big issue, you're going to want to get a pump that produces much more flow per watt, so that you can run it at less watts.
And on a side note, I did a tricky thing a long time ago before chillers were really widely available, where I double plumbed the pump, right? So it was the sump, and it came out into another tank, and I had the pump sitting in basically its own reservoir of water,
static water,
which is fresh water, and I had a fan on that to isolate.
That's pretty smart.
I don't know how much I was really taking away from the pump, but that's with LED lights nowadays, that's much less of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. Vortex pumps, LED lights, there's hardly any heat going into the
A lot of people are having to add heaters to their systems now because they're finding they have to overcompensate for using really efficient devices.
All right. Kevin Wadiak asks, if using the pump externally, would you recommend an additional rubber mat to reduce noise or vibration?
So the pump has silicone dampeners built in on the bottom, but honestly, you could take these right off, put it on a hard surface, and the pump would make almost no noise.
These feet are to absorb vibration, right? And so if there's no vibration to begin with,
there's very minimal vibration and noise associated with vibration or other forms of noise at all.
If you don't, believe us, don't want to take our word for it. If you're plummet in a closed loop system, one of the ways to do that is to use some soft tubing in between your pump and your hard tubing.
Yeah.
So you can use some really thick, quality silicone, or you can use spot flex instead of regular PVC to just help isolate some of that noise. But this pump really, when you turn it on in water, you just won't believe how quiet it is. So
there's no disadvantage to adding additional damping, but I don't think it's something that's critical for the Vectra.
right, I know we got some more building up.
Okay, yeah, we have another question. You mentioned the size of the L1 fittings. Can you tell us the size of the M1?
Absolutely. So the M1 fittings on the threaded side are 1/2 inch input and a 1 in 1/2.
I was about to say.
I'm sorry, thank you.
That's not half.
1 in 1/2 inch input and 1 in 1/4 inch output. And then the quick coupler adapts that down to a 1 inch slip input and a 3/4 inch slip output.
One thing I do like about your selection of the quick couplers is those are standard sizes.
Yeah.
Standard 3/4, return plumbing, 1 inch return plumbing.
Yeah.
It's not exotic. There's been a lot of really cool DC pumps provided by other companies, and they have metric fittings, which are just like a nightmare to couple, to convert up to something else. And so some of them have provided some adapters, but it's just the convenience of being able to, go to Home Depot and just get the parts you need, either to thread on top or to glue into these coupling. That is just golden. So important to me these days.
It's convenient, and we also plan to have a variety of desirable fittings that you might want for the Vectra available through the Ecotech Parts store.
I got to give you a little guff. The quick coupler barb adapter for the return and the quick coupler pre-filter can't come soon enough. Just the ability even of soft plumbing this, as a return, but also having the decoupling feature is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a quick
And
disconnect.
also, decoupling this for the pre-filter. That's just
To
a
clean
color.
it.
Yeah, those two accessories can't come out soon enough.
All right, appreciate the input.
Andy D wants to know, you spoke about attaching a barb to the pump earlier. Do you have to use a section of rigid PVC pipe to add the barb?
So, and that's what Jake was just speaking to. So for now, what you would do if you were going to use a barb fitting is you would, for example, on the L1, the threaded output is 1 in 1/2 inch. So you would get a 1 in 1/2 inch female threaded adapter and then thread in a male barb of whatever size barb
You can get a male barb with a female thread.
Yeah.
Those are a little bit pricey, but
In 1 in 1/2 inch, the barb may end up being extremely large.
yeah, depending on what you want to do. But depending on your size hose, I would just put some PVC in there and just put your hose right over that and use a clamp.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And what Jake is speaking to is basically a quick coupler version of a barb that would make life much easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We're fielding some questions right now on Facebook. If you have any questions, just go to the Ecotech Marine Facebook page and go ahead and shoot over there. We're trying to answer all your questions
Andy
live
D.
for the first time. And Andy D has another question.
Yeah, Andy D wants to know when the Ecotech Marine beer will be available.
That's a good
Well, right now we're having
come to our booth at Vectra.
we're having the taste test between the Refilters beer and the Ecotech Marine beer, and I think they taste about the same.
Yeah, pretty similar.
All right, that about wraps up most of the questions, guys.
All right.
Yeah, very cool. This is a really cool, very interesting product. Superficially it looks different, but I think the user experience is going to be very different.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks a lot for having me out here and do this Google Hangout. Very excited about this new product, and
We are too.
look forward to the White Scout release.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate all your questions.
All right, take care out there.
Take care.